Hello, today I want to talk about getting a Japanese motorcycle license, or more specifically, converting from a foreign license to a Japanese license. In Japanese, this is called Gaikoku Menkyo kara no kirikae. So, this is going to be a two-part series, and the first part will cover the document submission process and the written test. This process is the same for cars and motorcycles, so if you're going to get a car license, please keep watching. Part 2 will be about the driving test. First, let's talk about international licenses. If you plan to stay in Japan for less than 1 year, you will definitely get by with an international license. However, if you plan to stay in Japan for more than 1 year, you should convert your license to a Japanese license. There's a restriction that's not actually written on the license itself, but is part of Japanese law that states that you can only use an international driver's license for your first year in Japan. So if you renew your visa or stay longer, you may run into trouble with that. Be careful. Next, let's talk about the requirements. For cars, you need to be at least 18 years old. For smaller motorcycles or medium-class motorcycles, you need to be at least 16 years old. Small is up to 125cc engines, and medium class is up to 400cc engines. There's also an unlimited class. You need to be at least 18 years old to qualify for the unlimited class. Because you're converting from a foreign country license, you must have been a resident in the country that issued your license, and you also need to have stayed in that country at least 90 days after the issuance of the license. Be careful, because issuance here means the date you first received your license, not necessarily the date the license was renewed. So a New York State driver's license has an issuance date on the date the license was renewed. However, I received my license when I was 16 years old. So the person in the driving test center in Japan told me the original date of my license is what counts. So don't be concerned about that. Next, let's take a quick rundown of the process. There are 2 steps that need to be completed before visiting the test center. And after that, I'll talk about what you should expect when you are in the test center. The first of the 2 steps is getting a translation of your current foreign license. This is actually an official document, an official translation, so you can't do it yourself. I've read online it can be done at some embassies and consulates, but most people do it at a JAF office. JAF is the Japan Automobile Federation. You can also mail your documents into the JAF office, and they can mail it back to you when it's complete. It costs 3,000 yen. I did mine in the Yokohama office. It took about 2 or 3 hours. On their website, it says it could take up to 2 weeks. So you want to check the link below. The link is also in the description. The next step is to get a proof of residency document. In Japan, it's called a juminhyo. You get it at your ward office. It usually costs between 2 and 300 yen. When you fill out the document to request the juminhyo in Japan, there's a lot of different options of what information is included. Make sure you choose the option to include your nationality. It's required for converting a driver's license. Unfortunately, other documents with your address or photo are not acceptable as proof of residency. This is an official document to prove your residency. So now we're going to assemble all of our documents so that we can go down to the driving test center. First, we need the translation. Then we need the residency form. These are the 2 that I talked about before. Next, you need to bring with you your current driver's license, in my case a New York State license. I also brought my international driver's license with me. And I didn't have it, but if you have it, you should bring your Japanese driver's license with you. In the case where you already have a driver's license, but you want to convert a motorcycle license or a different class, you need to bring that license with you, because it will be added to your current license. You also need to bring your passport. Your current passport is required. If you have any old passports, you should also bring them with you. Your passport should include your embarkation, disembarkation paperwork, as well as your visa. The next thing you need is your Zairyu card, also known as your residency card. This is issued in the immigration center. You should have it if you're a resident in Japan. Finally, if you need corrective lenses, you should make sure to bring your glasses or contact lenses with you. There's also one more thing we need, and that's a passport size photo. In this case, it should be 3 centimeters by 2.4 centimeters. If you get it taken at a Japanese photo booth, you don't have to cut it out yourself. There should be a photo cutter in the office. In the case of Futamatagawa, there was a photo cutter at the information desk, and I just trimmed it down to the perfect size there. There's one last thing that I'm not exactly sure about. When you receive a license in Japan that's converted, it's considered a beginner's license, so there are a few restrictions on it. In the case of a motorcycle, you cannot ride with a passenger and you cannot ride on highways and expressways for the first year. For the first 3 years, you can't ride with a passenger on the expressway. You can clear those restrictions if you bring the appropriate paperwork. Unfortunately, I don't know exactly what that paperwork is. I've read online that it's a document that can be issued by the DMV of the issuing license country that is basically a history of your driving or your driving record. And if you submit this in Japan, you can get the beginner's restriction cleared. Unfortunately, I don't know the details. If you do, please write it in the comment below because I'd love to know about it. So, now you've got all your paperwork together and you take a look at the dates and times available. Of course, it should be Monday to Friday, Saturdays and Sundays closed, national holidays also closed. I went to Kanagawa Prefecture in Japan. So in Kanagawa, there were 2 sessions, at 8:30 a.m. and at 1 p.m. And they say that it takes about 4 hours. If you need an interpreter, you should arrange it yourself. The last point in this box is the most important. It says if the number of applicants exceeds our capacity, you may be requested to come another day. So, the most important thing is to come early because it's limited to 10 people per session in Kanagawa. Come early and sign in. There's a sign-up sheet sitting on the counter. If you sign in, you should be okay. So when I signed in, I was number 7 of 10. I was really lucky. Be careful. That one may end up biting you. Don't forget anything. If you forget even one piece of paperwork, you'll be rejected and you'll have to come back another day. And I also recommend bringing something to pass the time because you're going to be sitting there for 3 to 4 hours. So you should have a book or a game or some music to listen to. Alright, so let me walk you through my experience. I showed up at 12:30 because I wanted to go to the 1 o'clock time. I signed in, I was number 7 of 10. At exactly 1 o'clock, the window opened, and I stood and waited until they called my name. When they finally called me, I handed over all my paperwork. The person at the window does a really quick initial check. He just makes sure you have all the paperwork necessary, then he hands it back to the people in the back office and they do a full review. If the people in the back office have any questions or if there's any problems, they'll come out and call you and discuss the problem with you. For me, around 2:10, the paperwork was approved, and then they called me in to ask me health and driving history questions. Everything passed, it was okay. So then I had to go back to the main building to buy the revenue stamps to pay for the test for the day. After I got my revenue stamps, I turned the documents back into the first window, and then around 2:50, I was called for my eye test. And then after the eye test, they explained the restrictions that would be on my license. As I mentioned earlier, about 1 year with no passengers on ordinary roads and 3 years on the freeway. Around 3:20 or so, we took the written test. The test was available in various languages. In my case, I took it in English. In my group, there were also people taking it in Chinese and in Thai. If you speak another language more fluently than English or Japanese, you can check if your language is available. Around 3:40, everyone in my group was taken back to the main building and given our results. Everyone in my group passed the paper test. It's a really easy test to pass. Then the officer explained that most people do pass. However, passing the driving test is a lot more difficult. He told us most people fail the practical test 5 to 10 times, so be sure to learn the rules and the kind of way that Japanese drive. Learn it very precisely and carefully in order to take the test. He also explained to us how to reserve the driving test. When you received the results of your test, they had already booked your driving test for you, but they didn't ask you what date is the best. So it's probably an inappropriate day for most people. You'll end up canceling that and rescheduling it yourself. In my case, around 4 o'clock I was finished, so that was about 3 hours total. Really, really long day. But someday I'll have a bike like this. So let's just do a quick recap. The first steps, you go down to JAF and get your license translated. As of this recording, it costs 3,000 yen. Go to your ward office and get your proof of residency. That's 200 or 300 yen. Do these before you do anything else, because you need this paperwork. Then you go down to the test center with your license, the translation of your license, your passport, your visa, your residency card, your photo, your Japanese driver's license and international if you have them, and your corrective lenses if you require them. After that, you need to take the driving test. So that's going to be the next video's topic. Before you leave the driving center, there's one last thing you should take with you, and that's a map of the course. This is the map of the Ogata motorcycle course, the unlimited license course. You can buy a copy, or you can take a photo of the copies that they have hanging on the wall. The officer told us that it's okay to just take a picture, but you must memorize this course before you take the driving test. I repeat, you must memorize this course. If you make any mistakes, they will not tell you what you did wrong. So, if you make a wrong turn, you'll fail, and you might not know why. Take a copy of it, or buy a copy of this map. Take it home with you. Study, study, study. Memorize, memorize. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please leave a comment down below. I'd also love to hear your experience, if it was the same or different from mine. So feel free to share your experience in the comments down below. Thanks. See ya.